Hello and welcome to my channel. Today is Friday, so that means it's time for Deadly Days. As always, these come with a trigger warning because a lot of people die in heinous ways and sometimes children. So let's just jump into it because this one's a long one and we're going to be here a while. On August 3rd, 2019, a mass shooting occurred at a Walmart store in El Paso, Texas. The gunman, 21-year-old Patrick Wood Crucis, shot 45 people, killing 23 and injuring 22 others. The FBI investigated the shooting as an act of domestic terrorism and a hate crime. The shooting has been described as the deadliest attack on Latinos in modern American history. Crucis surrendered and was arrested and charged with capital murder in connection with the shooting. He posted a manifesto with white nationalist and anti-immigrant themes on the image board and Sean shortly before the attack. The manifesto cites the Christchurch Mosque shootings earlier that year and the far-right conspiracy theory known as the Great Replacement as inspiration for the attack. In 2023, Crucis pleaded guilty to 90 federal murder and hate crime charges, and he was sentenced to 90 consecutive life sentences. So, he's never getting out. Crucis pleaded guilty to the state charges on April 21st of 2025 and was sentenced to life in prison without parole. So, I mean, the federal charges carry a whole lot more weight, so he's definitely never getting out, but yeah, you gotta add on the state life sentence, and yeah, he's never getting out. I don't think he was eligible for parole with federal either. So, around midnight before the shooting, Crucis left his grandparents' house in Allen, Texas. Throughout the entire night, he drove 650 miles to El Paso, Texas. He stopped his car for gas and energy drinks twice throughout the journey, which means he had 2 times to stop and turn around and reconsider what he was doing. Not to mention the 650-mile trip alone. So, yeah. The next morning, Crucis eventually made it to El Paso at around 8 a.m. For roughly an hour, he drove around El Paso with no clear target in mind. It always happens when I film. I'm so sorry. He also stopped at a pizzeria but left because it was closed. He arrived at the Walmart near the Cieto Vista Mall on the east side of El Paso at around 9 a.m. Crucis entered the store and walked around for half an hour to carry out a reconnaissance of the building. He went back to his car and waited for a few minutes before entering the store again to purchase an orange. He ate the orange in the store before heading back to his car. I don't know why that's significant, but I don't know, maybe he was like using it as an excuse to cop the place, like, you know, whatever. At 10:15 a.m. while sitting in his car, Crucis opened his laptop, went on the image board Sean, and started a title thread, "It's Time." Accompanied with text, he accidentally uploaded a PDF file of a discipline letter sent by his college for attending a class while drunk, which says a lot on its own. 5 minutes later, he posted a reply in the thread and uploaded the PDF file of his manifesto. Like, how do you get that wrong, though? Like, you're so gung-ho about this. Like, how do you get it wrong? At 10:37 a.m., Crucis walked to the back of his car to gear up and pulled out a WASR-10 rifle, a semi-automatic civilian version of the AKM, from the trunk. A minute later, he closed the trunk and began opening fire. Crucis first killed a woman pushing a shopping cart before shooting several people near and at a fundraising event for the El Paso Fusion girls soccer team outside the store. During this initial shooting, Crucis killed 3 people, including a man who died 8 months later, and injured 6 people in the parking lot. And I do get into that, and yes, his death is attributed to Crucis shooting him, because it was from complications of that. So he did kill 3 people, even though 1 died many months later. The store manager witnessed Crucis firing in the parking lot prior to entering the crowded store. He issued a code brown, designating an active shooter to his employees, who began helping customers evacuate or hide. Approximately 3,000 people were in the mall's complex at the time of the shooting. Many customers and employees fled to adjacent stores or hid under tables or in shopping containers located behind the building. At 10:39 a.m., Crucis entered the Walmart through the west entrance. As he walked in, he fatally shot an elderly man As he walked in, he fatally shot an elderly man who tried running from him before walking to his right. He walked along the front of the store eastwards and fired at people along the way. He then turned towards a First Convenience Bank inside the store and shot several people in the bank lobby, killing 9. Cruces moved on to shoot people in the checkout lines, killing 9. Cruces eventually reached the eastern doors of the store and walked out of the building at 10:41 a.m. In total, he shot and killed 19 people and injured 15 others inside the Walmart building. As Cruces left the building, he opened fire on a moving car in the parking lot, killing a man and injuring his wife. Without shooting anyone else, Cruces returned to his car while still holding the rifle. First responders began to arrive within 6 minutes of the initial 911 call. The El Paso Police Department, Texas Rangers, and paramedics responded to the scene along with the FBI and ATF. After the shooting, Cruces drove to the intersection of Sunmount and Viscount. Arriving there, he stopped at the left turn lane, came out of the car with his hands up, and identified himself as the shooter to Texas Rangers and an El Paso motorcycle officer. He was then arrested and transported to police headquarters. The shooting has been described as the deadliest anti-Latino attack in recent U.S. history, resulting in 23 deaths and 22 injuries. 20 of the victims were pronounced dead at the scene. One victim died the day after the event, another victim died 2 days after, and a third died 8 months later on April 26th of 2020. Among the dead were 13 Americans, 8 Mexicans, and 1 German. The names, ages, and citizens of 22 of the dead were released by the El Paso Police Department on August 5th. 17 were 56 or older, 2 were in their 40s, 2 in their 20s, 1 was 36, and 1 was 15. 13 victims were taken to the University Medical Center of El Paso and another 11 to the Del Sol Medical Center. 2 children, ages 2 and 9, were transferred to El Paso Children's Hospital after their conditions were stabilized. The Del Sol Medical Center patients were between 35 and 82. Patrick Wood Cruces was arrested shortly after the shooting and charged with capital murder. A 21-year-old of German descent, he was last known to have lived in his family's home in Allen, Texas, and the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex, approximately 650 miles from El Paso. He graduated in 2007 from Plano Senior High School and was enrolled at Collin College from 2017 until spring of 2019. So this gets me. So he was against immigrants, but he was German. He was an American. Like, my dude, you are an immigrant. Like, this just makes no sense to me. I don't know if maybe it was just specifically against Latino immigrants, but from what I understood of his manifesto, it was just immigrants in general. So I don't really know how that works when you yourself are an immigrant, but it's not unheard of. I mean, you know, there are people within their subset or their ethnicity that are racist towards other people within their ethnicity of a different subset. It happens in the LGBT community, it happens in the white community, it happens in the black community. It's not unheard of. I'm just trying to wrap my brain around like how you can be anti-immigrant and be an immigrant. But okay. Cruces legally purchased a GPWASR-10 semi-automatic rifle and 1,000 rounds of hollow point ammunition online in June of 2019. During his first interrogation, he told detectives he had targeted Mexicans, according to an arrest warrant affidavit. Cruces was also diagnosed with schizoaffective disorder, so it does seem then that he was specifically Mexicans, but I mean, it's still immigration, and you're still an immigrant. Like, it doesn't make sense in my head. Cruces registered to vote in 2016 as a Republican and had a Twitter account from 2017 that showed a photo of Donald Trump in the Oval Office. He also had a pro-Trump poll that included responses such as hashtag build the wall, hashtag no sanctuary cities, hashtag keep Gitmo open, and hashtag ban Syrian refugees. Cruces has admitted to posting a manifesto titled The Inconvenient Truth on the online message board Sean shortly before the shooting. The post includes the suspect's name, and the manifesto identifies the type of weapon used in the attack. Site moderators quickly removed the original post, though users continued to share copies because we're a fucked up population and this is what we do. Claiming to have been inspired by the Christchurch mosque shootings in New Zealand that killed 51 people earlier the same year, the author expresses support for the perpetrator of the Christchurch shootings and bemoans grievances such as environmental degradation, cultural and ethnic replacement, and a, quote, Hispanic invasion, end quote. The anti-Hispanic, anti-immigrant manifesto to promote, the anti-Hispanic / anti-immigrant, so it is anti-immigrant, that's what I'm saying. It's not just specifically Hispanics, that's just who he targeted in this particular situation. So, literally everybody in America is technically an immigrant if you think about it. So, I don't know. To promote the white nationalist and far-right conspiracy theory called the Great Replacement, often attributed to the French writer Renaud Camus. Probably didn't say that right. While the document uses language about immigrants similar to that used by U.S. President Donald Trump, such as referring to a migrant invasion, it states that the author's beliefs predate Trump's presidency and that Trump should not be blamed for the attack. The author's, quote, radically extremist views, according to New York Times, could be used to prosecute the shooting as a hate crime or domestic terrorism, which is basically what it was. You drove 650 miles with the intention to murder as many people as you could because you didn't like them. That, to me, sounds like terrorism. I don't know. That's what it sounds like to me. The manifesto states that Democrats would soon control the United States, partly due to an increasing Hispanic population, an idea that had gained acceptance for years on right-wing radio shows, criticizing both the Democratic Party and Republican Party for allowing corporations to import foreign workers. The author describes the shooting as an incentive for Hispanics to leave the country, which would remove the threat of a Hispanic voting bloc. Primarily focused on ethnic and racial grievances, the document also expresses fears of automation's effects on employment and blames corporations for overusing natural resources. The arrest warrant affidavit says Crucius waived his Miranda rights, confessed to detectives that he was the shooter, and admitted that he targeted Mexicans during the attack. Multiple investigations and jurisdictions were involved with the case. FBI officials in El Paso served multiple warrants in the Dallas area and interviewed acquaintances of Crucius in Dallas and San Antonio. On February 6, 2020, Crucius was charged with 90 federal charges, 22 counts of committing a hate crime resulting in death, 22 counts of use of a firearm to commit murder, 23 counts of a hate crime involving an attempt to kill, and 23 counts of use of a firearm during a crime. Crucius waived his federal bond hearing on February 12, 2020, during his first federal appearance. On July 23, 2020, Crucius entered a plea of not guilty to federal charges. He also waived his arraignment on those charges. In July 2020, the federal court granted a defense motion for more time to investigate, quote, a number of red flag mitigation themes, end quote, as federal prosecutors decided whether to seek a death sentence. In the motion, the defense stated that Crucius had severe lifelong neurological and mental disabilities that he was treated with antipsychotic medication for after his arrest and that he was in a psychotic state when arrested. The trial was delayed due to the COVID-19 pandemic and the large volume of evidence. At a February 2022 hearing, the defense team requested a trial start date of March 2025 or later, while federal prosecutors asked for a June 2023 trial date. Defense attorneys said they needed more time to comb through 1.76 million files and 763 gigabytes of video obtained through the discovery process, and told U.S. District Judge David C. Guatemala that the defense might raise an insanity defense. In January of 2023, federal prosecutors declined to seek the death penalty for Crucius. On February 8, 2023, Crucius pleaded guilty to 90 federal murder and hate crime charges. Before sentencing, when asked if he felt remorse, he nodded. He couldn't even say it. On July 7, 2023, Crucius was sentenced to 90 consecutive life sentences, and honestly, good for them. Crucius was indicted on capital murder charges by a Texas grand jury on September 12, 2019. He pleaded not guilty to capital murder charges at his arraignment on October 10, 2019 at the El Paso County Courthouse. I don't know how you plead guilty to federal charges but then plead not guilty to state charges, which are for the same incident. I'm not really sure how his thought process was on that or what his defense attorneys were thinking, because if you admit your guilt to the federal level of you intended to go in and shoot these people and caused this mayhem and this hurt and this damage, then you would be guilty also on the state level. So I'm not really sure what the difference was or why they were trying to get him out. Like, I mean, if I was going to plead not guilty, it'd be to, like, federal charges, which is a lot like big boy. That's big boy prison, as opposed to pleading not guilty at the state charge, but pleading guilty at federal. That's just me. I don't know what his thought process was or what the defense team's thought process was, but to me it didn't really seem to make sense when he just pleaded guilty to federal charges. So, Mark Stevens, a San Antonio criminal defense attorney, was appointed by the state court to represent Crucis along with defense attorney Joe Spencer. On April 28, 2020, prosecutors announced they would be seeking a new capital murder charge following the recent death of a 23rd victim after he spent 9 months in the hospital. So he spent the entire time after the shooting in the hospital and died in the hospital. That is why his death is attributed to the shooting, and he is included in that victim count because that is ultimately what killed him. Proceedings in the state trial were delayed due to the COVID-19 pandemic and the massive amount of evidence in the case. El Paso District Attorney Bill Hicks has stated that his office intends to pursue the death penalty in this case. In 2025, El Paso District Attorney James Montoya, who replaced incumbent Bill Hicks, announced he would no longer be seeking the death penalty. Crucis pleaded guilty to the state charges on April 21st, 2025, and was sentenced to life in prison without parole. And maybe that's why he didn't want to plead guilty, because he was going to get the death penalty, and then when that was off the table, he was like, whatever, yeah, I did it, whatever. But I'm still not sure what the thought process of pleading not guilty was, because you had already pleaded guilty to federal charges. So, who knows? And was sentenced to life in prison without parole. He is currently incarcerated at the Louis C. Powledge unit in Palestine, Texas. Several funeral homes in El Paso and Ciudad Juarez announced they would provide funeral services for free to the families of the victims as a sign of solidarity for their community. Ciudad Juarez Rotary International Chapter organized a vigil in Ciudad. They gathered at a park and lit candles and shone cell phone lights in El Paso's direction as a sign of solidarity. Antonio Bosco declared his wife's funeral on August 16th to be open to anyone who wished to attend. Hundreds of people from El Paso and other parts of the country attended, and flowers were sent from around the world. El Paso musician Khalid held a benefit concert for his home city on September 1st, featuring high-profile artists and introduced by fellow El Paso native and former U.S. Representative Beto O'Rourke. 1 week after the shooting, a citizen from Ciudad Juarez, Jorge Luis Martinez Chavez, ran a total of 22 miles. A mile for each of the people killed in the Walmart shooting. One additional victim did die months later, which we discussed. But at the time that he did this, there were only 22 victims. Starting at the Zaragoza Bridge in Juarez, Mexico, and finishing at the Walmart Memorial in El Paso, where the attack was perpetrated. And I honestly, big kudos to him. I cannot run that much. I can't run at all. But even if I could, I probably couldn't run 22 miles. So big kudos to him. And I think that's a very, very sweet way to memorialize the people who lost their lives, because that's who matters in this case. 2 days after the shooting, a Walmart corporate employee sent a memorandum to Walmart's e-commerce division, which includes thousands of employees urging a sick-out strike to force the corporation to stop selling guns. Walmart later sent out a memo instructing employees to remove signs and displays that contained violent themes or aggressive behavior, and pledged $400,000 for funds that were aimed at helping the victims of the mass shooting. On September 3rd, the company announced it would stop selling ammunition for handguns and assault rifles in the United States, as well as ask customers not to openly carry firearms into their stores. And that's the very sad story of the El Paso Walmart shooting. You know, I live in Ohio, but we have had a Walmart shooting here, literally just up the street from my house. And it was scary. Like, I wasn't there, but hearing about it and knowing that that's so close to home, where we have not had a major shooting like that in my area, is scary. It's very scary. So when I cover things like this makes me so much more aware of my surroundings and the people around me. Like, I go to the movies, I've been watching everybody who gets up. Like, are you going to the bathroom? Are you going to come back? Like, are you being sketchy? You know what I mean? Like, I've done so many of these cases, sadly, that, like, it's not made me paranoid, but it's made me observant. You know, like, I don't go out and assume that every person I pass is, you know, a dangerous criminal, because what are the odds? But having that shooting happen so close to my hometown has made me realize this shit can happen anywhere. And it does happen anywhere and everywhere. And it is very sad. And it is something that I do think needs to be focused on. Now, I'm not anti-guns and I'm not anti-gun rights. I just think that there needs to be a little bit more control on that. But I honestly don't know how they would do that, because, you know, I've covered cases where people have flat out lied about having mental health issues and be like, no, nothing's wrong with me. And if that's not recorded anywhere, they're not going to know. So I don't know if maybe there needs to be a database or something, but unfortunately, you know, I've always said that even if we took away guns, criminals will find a way to get them. It's not going to change anything. I wish it would, but the reality is criminals are already breaking the law. They'll break the law to get the weapon they need. It's not a, oh, if we take guns away, then nothing bad is ever going to happen, because that's not reality. Especially in America. But I wish there was something that we could come up with that would make it a little less, you know, prominent, because it's almost every day now that you hear about some kind of mass shooting, which is very sad. But right now I don't know of anything that we could do off the top of my head that would fix this, because I can think of 1,000 ways that it could be broken. And that's on being a true crime influencer, YouTuber, whatever. Being someone who researches into this stuff, I can think of 1,000 ways to break every law in the country if I was a criminal. Not that I would do that, because that's like, nah, I would not do well in jail. Anyway, moving on. As always, please don't do anything I wouldn't do. Be cautiously kind to others. Make good choices. Leave your comments in the section. Comments in the comment section down below. Let me know if there's anything you would like me to cover, whether it's a cold case, a missing and murdered, a deadly days, or just a regular true crime serial killer type thing. I am working on a Christmas special, so hopefully that will be coming up around Christmas. We'll see how well I do with that. Anyway, as always, thank you, and I love you guys, and be careful, especially during the holidays. I'll see you all next week. Bye!